This is Chris over at transientmobile.com. I wanted to start off a mixing series by a band called Scarlet, and the song's called Reach Her. And I figured I'd take you guys through the drums, bass, guitars, percussion, vocals. I didn't actually start with drums in this particular case, even though that's what I normally do. The vocals kind of had some hot spots, so I'll show you that later on. For now, I will show you a taste of what this thing sounds like, and then we'll break down the drums.
You went to hide her and left her reaching for the door. I always loved her. I loved her when she let me go. So when I saw her, I saw her punished by a crime. I could remember that she's the reason that I used to smile.
Alright, so sounds pretty cool. I actually ended up liking the song quite a bit. But let's go ahead and solo up the drums here, and I will bypass the plugins on there. And if you'll notice on this room mic, I've got a delay going pretty much full time going over to this delay here, and the snare has a delay of its own. I use that on the bridge, and I'll show you how what I use that for when we get there. But here is the drum section of what we just heard with the plugins bypassed. Alright, so a pretty cool raw sound. What I like to do is go through in mono and check the phase relationship. So you'll see on the snare here, I got this little phase notation that I was flipping the phase on that one in case I switched EQs or something like that. But let me break that down for you. What I basically do is get the overheads going, and I'm listening in mono, and I'll pick whatever next instrument. So we'll start with the kick. So I'll get this overhead going. I'll bring in the kick. And then generally what I like to do is open up an EQ, and I'll see I actually got the phase flipped on this one. And that's the first thing I end up doing is just listening to both of these by themselves and just take a listen and see which ones get a little more low end, get a little more beef going. So I'll do that for you with this thing on the phase back to positive. So I got a little bit fuller on that, and that's pretty much all that EQ is doing. And with the second one, I ended up doing some cutting in the mids here and gave it a little bit of bottom end. But before we move on to that EQ, let's go over to the overheads and see what we did here. Basically, with this thing, I went sweeping like I do with every track going forward. If you see any of these falling into the negative, that means I cut. Like this one's a huge cut at 73 kilohertz. So let's take a listen to what this one sounds like if I boost it back up. So for that, it just kind of got rid of a little bit of the boxiness and kind of weird harshness on the cymbal. I didn't do any boosting of the lows or cutting, and I gave it some highs and no compression. I just wanted to clean this thing up a little bit. Little clarity out on the cymbals, sparkle, getting out some of the mud. And next I brought in the bass drum here, and we'll see what I did on EQ with this. this low mid section always kind of seems to have some box. So let me show you what that sounds like. Boost it up first. I'll just solo this. So right now we're just going to be listening to this. That's a pretty big difference just on that. That's a pretty generous cut, almost 7.5. And then I want a little bit more low end out of it, so I gave it a little bit of, I used the low mid, but it doesn't matter. I'm boosting 48 hertz. So I lied to you, I actually had that bypass, but this was on the whole time. And I'm actually using headphones for this tutorial, but on a regular set of monitors I could hear a pretty good significant beef in the low end come up with that thing. This thing also had a trigger, which I just left it as is and sort of blended to taste. So let me play you the bass drum and then I'll play you this trigger. Pretty cool sounding trigger, pretty beefy, pretty wet sounding. Moving on to the snare, and I'll go ahead and solo these overheads and let you hear the phase reverse on that. Once again, getting some highs, clearing out a little bit of the ring here. 2.6 cut on this. And a cut down here, pretty generous one. And then I brought in some beef down here, bottom end, yeah, almost 250 hertz. And you could even go a little more on that. And with this one, I'm compressing it about a 3-to-1 ratio. And just peaking it, nothing too crazy. I didn't roll any off, gave it a little bit of crack on the highs, and mainly just used that phase reverse to get that in line. Toms sounded pretty great. With the room, I left that. I actually left both toms and the room all by itself. Let me find a spot with some decent tom work in it. There's not much going on in this song. Just a couple flourishes. Yeah, and these were actually already cleaned up, sort of gated or silenced out when I got them. So they sounded pretty good. I didn't do anything but pan those in the room. Once again, same thing. I actually pan this over here, but I'm sending this to this delay here full time. So it's kind of doing a little bit of a weird stereo thing. Let me play you just this, and then I'll play it with the delay going on. Alright, so it's off to the side. It doesn't even really fit. Kind of makes the drum sound a little, unbalanced. But when I add this delay in here, the delay is kind of moving that thing to both sides. Now it does sound a little weird on here, and I normally don't use delay on drums, believe me. But this thing I just ended up wanting a little space on it. I tried it. I ended up liking it. And when you hear it with the rest of the drums, it's not super noticeable. I mean, even when you stop it. This gives it a little bit of space there, and that's pretty much what I was looking for. I didn't feel like doing the reverb thing. On this delay, it's just a standard Digi-Rack extra long delay. That's it. I ended up just tweaking it around until I found some sounds that I liked, kind of adjusted the sides a little bit on both so there wasn't the exact same delay. Adjusted the low pass filter differently on both and the depth. And that was it. I ended up liking it, kind of an alternative to reverb, which, you know, everybody throws reverb on drums, myself included. I mean, reverb's great, and I have a reverb on here, but not on the drums. So let's move on to the snare delay. And the snare delay was something I wanted to use on this bridge here. I ended up going to the bridge, and I wanted something to stand out a little bit. So let me play this for you, and then you'll hear this snare delay kick in. So I got this delay here is a separate delay just for this snare. And I just decided I wanted something different on the bridge. Actually put an effect on the vocal. Kind of makes the bridge a little bit different from the rest of the song. And this thing kicks on and kicks off. Oh yes, last but not least, I needed to show you guys. I did put some compression on the snare and this analog saturator on the snare. So let's go, or on the drum bus. Let's go for the snare real quick. And I'll pick the chorus over the bridge here. I actually got a touch going here, but I wanted a little more tone. So I ended up using this stock Digi, but I'll let you hear what that sounds like when this is on. That's not much ratio going on, and I'm not even using the full makeup gain, but I kind of gave it a little bit more punch. Last but not least, on the entire drum bus, all these drums are routed down to this bus here, and then on this one I end up using this P&M analoger, and I ended up getting this plug-in on a little Facebook like page. And they were like, if you guys give us a like, we'll give you a free plugin. And I saw Graham at the Recording Revolution reviewing some of these, and I ended up giving it a shot, and I've used it ever since. Not on everything, but it ends up finding its way pretty often. So here's what this thing sounds like. It's on tape mode. I kind of back it down quite a bit, but I'll let you hear what it sounds like. Gives a little more vibe, a little more punch, kind of some energy to the cymbals. And that's about it. I also have one on the mix bus Submaster, but I'll show you that when we get there. And that concludes the drum setup for this. So once again, this is Chris from transientmobile.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.